Welcome to this explainer. Okay, so have you ever actually really looked at the plants right outside your window and realized you're staring at highly specialized engineering marvels? I know, it is so easy to just dismiss them as, passive background scenery. But these are dynamic, living things. They're growing right here on Earth alongside us, and they are operating with a biological architecture that is just incredibly complex. Today, we're going to look under the hood of the plant kingdom. We're going to uncover the magnificent systems, the evolutionary upgrades, and some frankly brilliant survival strategies that literally keep our world running. Think about this for a second. Every single aspect of human life is propped up by four critical biological pillars: food, shelter, medicine, and building materials. These aren't just lucky byproducts, right? They are the direct result of millions of years of relentless botanical innovation. Plants have literally engineered ways to synthesize the sun's energy into carbohydrates, lock carbon into rigid structural polymers so we can build shelters, and produce these incredibly complex chemical compounds that we absolutely rely on for modern medicine. Without this invisible biological engineering happening silently all around us, life as we know it simply wouldn't exist. So to really grasp how they pull all this off on such a massive scale, we have to look at how they're built from the ground up. All right, so here is our roadmap for today. First, we'll cover the power of plants. Then we'll map out their internal vascular highway. And finally, we'll classify the plant kingdom by its major feature sets: flowering plants, cone-bearing plants, and spore-bearing plants. Okay, let's jump right into section 1, the power of plants and its two main branches. Basically, this massive life-giving kingdom is divided into two primary functional groups: flowering plants and non-flowering plants. Moving on to section 2, the vascular highway, or what I like to call nature's plumbing. To really get how plants function on a macro level, we have to understand how they move their vital resources around. This is where nature's plumbing comes in. It's basically a dual-lane vascular highway made of two things: xylem and phloem. So the xylem is the tissue responsible for carrying water and dissolved minerals up from the roots. And what makes this a true engineering marvel is how it totally defies gravity. Through a combination of root pressure, capillary action, and transpirational pull, which, by the way, is just the negative pressure created when water evaporates from the leaves, the xylem can pump water hundreds of feet up into the sky. It's how giant redwoods can tower over a forest. Meanwhile, you have the phloem operating in the exact opposite direction. It distributes the rich, photosynthesized sugars created up in the canopy all the way down to the roots and the rest of the plant. It's a constant, highly efficient, gravity-defying transport loop. Let's shift gears to our first major system upgrade in section 3, flowering plants, also known as the angiosperms. Angiosperms are basically the ultimate packaging experts of the natural world. These are flowering plants that produce seeds completely encased inside fruits. Now, in the grand timeline of evolution, this was a massive biological system upgrade. Instead of just, dropping exposed seeds to the ground and hoping for the best, angiosperms engineered this nutrient-rich, often brightly colored casing. By wrapping their seeds in a delicious fruit, they essentially outsourced their transportation. They incentivized animals to eat the fruit, travel miles away, and then deposit the seeds in a brand new location, complete with a little bit of natural fertilizer, if you catch my drift. It is a genius symbiotic distribution network. And you interact with this evolutionary triumph literally every single day. Think about corn, mango, papaya, and yes, the tomato. Biologically speaking, a tomato is a fruit. It's been heavily engineered by nature over millions of years to protect those tiny internal seeds. So every time you slice into a juicy tomato or a fresh mango, you're looking directly at a highly calculated biological strategy designed to guarantee the survival of the next generation. That brings us to section 4, cone-bearing plants, or the gymnosperms. Now, the word gymnosperm literally translates from Greek to mean naked seeds. These are cone-bearing plants that utilize that exact same high-speed vascular highway we mapped out a minute ago, but they skip the whole fruit production thing entirely. Evolutionarily speaking, gymnosperms predate flowering plants by hundreds of millions of years. They absolutely dominated the earth way before the first flower ever even bloomed. They use this tough, weather-resistant approach to protect their seeds, and that is exactly what has allowed them to survive drastic climate shifts and even multiple mass extinctions. What we are really looking at here is a fascinating battle of biological strategies. See, creating a tasty, fleshy fruit requires a massive metabolic cost from the plant. It takes a lot of water and energy to grow a mango. That's the angiosperm strategy. The gymnosperm, however, takes an armored fortification route. By producing seeds wedged tightly between the hard, woody scales of a cone, the plant expends way fewer resources on sugar and water and instead focuses on building a highly durable microvault. It's a completely different yet equally brilliant way of navigating the harsh realities of nature. So when you picture pine trees, junipers, cycads, or ginkgos, you're picturing gymnosperms. And their engineering gets even more specialized depending on their exact environment. For instance, some pine species produce what are called serotoninous cones. These cones are sealed super tight with a strong resin, and they are biologically engineered to only open and release their seeds when exposed to the extreme, intense heat of a forest fire. Wild, right? This guarantees that their seeds are dropped onto freshly cleared, nutrient-dense soil where they have absolutely zero competition for sunlight. It's just absolute ecological brilliance. All right, moving on to our final category in Section 5, spore-bearing plants, the sporophytes. But before we dive into this last group, I want to pose a fascinating engineering puzzle for you. Why is it that mosses cling so tightly to the surface of a rock, completely restricted in their growth, while a nearby pine tree can rocket hundreds of feet into the sky? Seriously, why do some plants seem to be permanently locked to the forest floor? Well, the answer all comes down to internal architecture. They do not have vascular bundles. Remember that xylem and phloem? Those tissues don't just transport water, they also contain a complex organic polymer called lignin, which provides immense structural support. It's those lignified cell walls that give taller plants their remarkable tensile strength. Because these smaller plants lack this internal plumbing network, they simply don't have the gravity-defying scaffolding needed to grow tall, so their physical footprint is kept highly restricted. Meet the sporophytes. These are plants that produce spores rather than flowers or seeds. Because they lack both that complex lignified plumbing and the protective casing of a seed, they have to rely on a much more ancient, raw method of reproduction. They basically strip away the metabolic costs of fruits, cones, and deep root systems entirely. Instead of seeds, they produce spores. These are microscopic units of genetic material that are frequently developed in vast quantities right on the underside of their leaves. Because they don't have the safety of a fruit or a heavy cone, they're playing a massive evolutionary numbers game. They engineer these spores to be incredibly lightweight and highly aerodynamic. That way, they can catch the wind and travel for miles, just hoping a tiny fraction of them happen to land in a hospitable environment. You probably know these plants best as mosses, ferns, and liverworts, and their lack of a vascular system strictly dictates exactly where they can live. This is exactly why you always find them thriving in damp, heavily shaded, moisture-rich environments. Since they can't pump water from deep underground, they have to rely on directly absorbing ambient moisture from their immediate surroundings. They've perfectly adapted to conquer the specific ecological niches that larger vascular plants just leave behind. So, the next time you step outside, are you just going to see a green blur, or will you recognize the invisible, high-speed vascular highways pumping water up to the canopy? Will you see the evolutionary genius of fruit packaging, the armored fire-resistant cones, and those resilient microscopic spores riding the wind? Once you truly understand the sheer engineering of the natural world, you can never really unsee it. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and hey, keep exploring the incredible systems operating silently all around us.